Story 1. China, South Korea, and Japan announced they will be coordinating their responses to United States tariffs. Two of our allies are partnering with a regional adversary to coordinate against us. Europe is positioning itself to no longer need us. We resemble Britain at the end of World War II. We are an aging nation that may never regain its former greatness, largely because a significant portion of America was misled. Story 2. The world market will likely trust the United States far less. It will be difficult to repair that and challenging to operate without allies. Story 3. The middle class will continue to disappear. The wealthiest 5% will own an increasing share of wealth. Artificial intelligence will disrupt jobs, causing many people to lose employment. The government will remain unresponsive and follow the lead of influential individuals, as the public continues to elect the same politicians. Housing will still not meet demand. Story 4. I keep getting poorer while smug individuals keep telling me it's good for my hard-earned money to lose value. Story 5. It is concerning that we import so much that simply turning it off overnight seems impossible. Many areas in the United States may become ghost towns in the coming years. Story 6. Pessimism. The U.S. economy is declining, and Trump is conjuring up a war to stimulate the economy. This strategy worked for a time for Hitler. Story 7. Say goodbye to the unipolar world order we have had since the 1990s. Russia got what it wanted. Although the second pole is likely to be the European Union rather than Russia or China, due to wartime economics and demographics, respectively. The United States could reclaim its position as the undisputed center of global commerce, but it will likely take more than a full presidential term after Trump. Russia might try to drag the European Union into World War III in an attempt to bring the whole world down to its level. However, just like in the last two world wars, it is a desperate thrashing from a decaying regime. Damage will be done, but it is likely that such a war would simply solidify the European Union or possibly a Kansas union of former Commonwealth nations as a new superpower on par with, or even beyond the United States, depending on how the United States handles itself during World War III. As a Canadian, I am firmly buckled in and praying that this crazy carnival ride doesn't go all Final Destination on us. Story 8. 4 years of challenges, followed by 2 to 4 more years of a Democrat addressing a struggling economy typically inherited from Republicans. This trend can be observed in historical patterns. Story 9. Looking back from 2015 to now, I would have never guessed any of this. Trying to predict what will happen by 2035 seems unrealistic. Story 10. Trump's actions will hurt the country's status as the world's technology leader. Suddenly, most of the world will look to China for technology and engineering leadership. We will still hold a significant share of the market, but we will not be guiding the direction. We will be following. Story 11. The next 4 years are expected to be marked by greed and corruption, potentially leading to a significant economic depression. This period may deplete many people's savings. We are witnessing the largest transfer of wealth to the top 1% in American history. The former president proposes to invest the United States gold reserves into Bitcoin. His intention appears to be acquiring a substantial amount and leveraging the U.S. Treasury to inflate his wealth using public gold. Story 12. Why do you ask people on Reddit when 16 Nobel Prize-winning economists took out a full-page ad before the election to predict the devastation of the Trump slump? They stated it would take 10 years or more for the economy to recover, if it can. Even if you don't read print media, this was covered on many YouTube channels. Perhaps people don't want to accept the opinions of economists. The economy is heavily influenced by consumer confidence, and that's declining every day. This sets up a cycle of people not spending disposable income, which decreases demand, leading companies to lay off employees. As a result, people have less money, which leads to even less spending, and the cycle continues. This will be much worse than 2008. Considering the uninformed individuals in charge, it will likely be much worse. Story 13. As long as we have a person in the White House who thinks tariffs are a tax on another country, I don't feel very confident. It is the unpredictability that hurts the most. Investors dislike unpredictability. Story 14. Trump is harming the source of prosperity. That source is freedom, diversity, and meritocracy. Story 15. The crash and burn will happen quickly, then it will smolder for years, with smoke drifting past the presidential podium as Trump blames Obama for everything. Story 16. It will be chaotic for a while. Financial centers will shift from New York's Wall Street to Germany or Japan. The world will transition away from the dollar and oil. The United States will still be a player, but it will not resemble the past 80 years. On the bright side, Americans will finally learn the metric system. Story 17. There is no chance the United States will avoid a synthetically caused recession. The recovery from that recession will begin in 4 years, starting with cars becoming 25% cheaper overnight. Story 18. Steady decoupling of the United States dollar, increasingly desperate living conditions for the bottom 70%, technosadism reinforced by software engineers and programmers alike as the last unaffected class of the workforce, and a significant housing market collapse in major cities specifically. Story 19. We will survive. As history has shown, the Republicans will damage the economy, the public will reject the results, the Republicans will lose the House of Representatives and possibly the Senate, depending on who is up for election, as the Senate has a longer election cycle. The Democrats will revive the economy, and then the cycle will begin again. Story 20. Without serious government reforms to rein in the President of the United States, no nation should trust the United States going forward. I live here and have almost zero trust in our government at this point. Story 21. One of the wonderful things about being an American is that our money is the world's reserve currency. It's not that we have a trade deficit with China. It's that they have an investment deficit with us. They are willing to send us physical goods in exchange for slips of paper that we can print for free. A dozen countries use United States dollars because they trust it more than their own currency. Another dozen use dollars for their major transactions. I suspect each of those countries is reevaluating whether the dollar is a stable asset and will begin trying to exchange them for euros, yen, Swiss francs, or something else. That will be devastating for America. We will have to start paying full price for things and we'll discover just how much of a premium we had. Story 22. Recession could potentially lead to depression if they undermine the Federal Reserve as they appear to be intending. The 10-year time frame seems reasonable. Story 23. The dollar is dead to me, and I am looking for a better long-lasting asset. I have lost all respect for what the dollar represents and would rather invest in a new way. I don't have much as I am a fully disabled veteran, but what America has become is not something I want to support. Story 24. We will become slaves, indentured servants, or servants for the wealthiest individuals who support Trump and the feudalism he is introducing. It is genuinely terrifying. Story 25. A significantly weakened United States has lost many of its intellectuals who would have driven the next innovations, trying to fight its way back into a global economy that now centers on China. Story 26. The United States is actively discouraging customers and harming its brand. I am part of a team planning a major project, and we are compelled to avoid the U.S. supply chain due to its unpredictability. It is too risky. Every sensible business is taking the same approach. Climate change is also expected to significantly increase prices. Food and insurance will become so expensive that current prices will seem like a dream. The situation will be much worse than the last 5 years of rising cost of living. Story 27. I am an optimist, so after a few years of economic depression, while a multipolar world emerges, people will grow frustrated with wealthy donors and media propaganda. A populist Democrat will take power in 2028 and enact significant economic reforms for a stronger welfare state, leading to re-election. America will become more like the modern United Kingdom, powerful, developed, and relevant, but past its prime and just another country rather than holding world dominance. Story 28. Years of turmoil with harmful racist individuals in charge. There has been a considerable struggle to regain control from them, followed by decades of repairing relationships and slow recovery. All authoritarian regimes eventually fall, so we hope to end this one swiftly. Story 29. I believe the United States will continue its steady decline as its eroding integrity in governance, diplomacy, and unaddressed late-stage capitalism continues to undermine our foundation. Story 30. The United States is going to lose all trading partners. Nobody can trust them anymore, and that will persist after Trump. I expect a depression-level era as a result of Trump's policies. Story 31. A year ago, I would have said that we were the clear winners of this century. Now, I'm kind of worried that there won't be a United States economy in 10 years. I still think we are going to pull through this, but we are certainly not doing ourselves any favors. Story 32. If this tariff situation becomes a common issue for the next decade, we are facing a recession since we no longer produce much domestically. Everything has been moved overseas for better profits. Story 33. Another deep Republican recession followed by another Democratic recovery. This pattern has remained consistent for the last 100 years. Story 34. They'll be fine, but Americans will have to get used to a significantly worse quality of life. Small businesses will struggle while larger businesses will thrive. Many jobs will be lost, leading to increased urbanization and taxes. The middle class in America will live like Europeans without the quality of life services they receive from taxes. However, the overall economy will remain stable. Fox News acts as state media. I'm concerned that Americans may never understand why life will become worse, and it will get significantly worse before it improves. Story 35. The trade agreements will never return to pre-tariff tactics. The American boycott on goods will prevail along with the travel boycott. These actions over 3 months will have long-term effects and be unrecoverable. It will be like taking back an ex who claims to have changed. To answer the question directly, devastating. Story 36. Next year, I have to decide whether to move permanently to the United States or to Australia. I have enough money to start a textile business and sustain it for several years, and I want to make the right decision about where to establish it, in the United States or in Australia. I don't know much about politics, which is why I want to hear your opinions on which country is better for starting a long-term business. How do you view the United States economy in the long run? Is it riskier than investing in Australia? I'm open to all kinds of opinions and feedback. Story 37. Bold of you to assume there will be a United States economy in 10 years with the current situation we are witnessing. Story 38. The Trump administration's immigration and foreign policy will greatly discourage tourism. Tourism in every state will take a massive hit in the United States, which will also negatively impact the service and restaurant industries, hotels, and vacations. This will affect local tourism economies the hardest. I predict the GDP of the United States will actually shrink. Story 39. My expectations? That's my expectation. If you all were smart, you would withdraw too. This government is trying to rapidly turn into a banana republic. Story 40. Not as good. Allies are retracting. Global trade is reducing. Other countries will partner among themselves and exclude the United States. Story 41. It will decline significantly in the next few years. It is difficult to predict what will happen afterward due to the uncertainty of the political situation. Could continue to decline, stabilize, or even begin to recover. However, for a true recovery to happen, we must demonstrate to the world that we have moved past our turbulent era and are returning to normalcy. This will be a challenging task. Story 42. Republicans will dismantle it. Democrats will restore it, then get ousted from office because the cost of eggs is high, and Republicans will dismantle it again. Story 43. Expectation. Older individuals will pass away, and more rational minds will be compelled to take charge. Ironically, women will fill that gap, similar to other exemplary democracies around the world. Story 44. The United States has become like a friend who turned to substance abuse and is now exploiting their former friends. Where do you think it will be in 10 years? Based on my extensive experience with some of those friends, they rarely survive for a decade after reaching that point, and those who do often become hollow shells of their former selves. Story 45. As an American, I feel pessimistic. With each passing day, a depression seems more likely, bordering on inevitable. Thank you, Republicans. Story 46. Pretty much no matter what, every American will be poorer except for the small fraction of individuals who benefit from political patronage. Story 47. The US dollar will lose its global reserve status, leading to unprecedented global economic volatility. Story 48. As someone who works in the finance sector, I encourage everyone to be prepared. The next 10 years may present challenges. Story 49. Increased theft, fewer items in stock, higher prices, fewer fake jobs, and more economic independence from other nations. There is likely a serious push for higher wages now that there isn't someone avoiding taxes to compete with. Story 50. Trump has harmed our economy, alienated our allies, and made us one of the most disliked nations in the world. It will take years to recover from the damage he has caused. Story 51. Trump is isolating the United States. Once he is gone, it will take decades to recover, and some aspects may never recover. Story 52. In addition to the probable hyperinflation caused by Trump's economic policies, we must not forget that climate change looms over everything. Increasingly extreme weather will affect the working class and the poor much more than the upper class. Food shortages may become a reality, leading to a rise in poverty and homelessness. Eventually, I believe we will move away from the Republican agenda and rise up against it. I also think the Democratic Party will face challenges, and the United States may evolve into a somewhat socialist nation. Story 53. I don't know what it will be like, but I am pretty sure it will be covered widely in economic books and articles. Story 54. It will still be regarded as the most important thing while the general population suffers. Story 55. Unless things change, we will fall behind other countries. That is the general trend. However, as long as Donald Trump remains in control, the situation will worsen at a faster rate. Story 56. I think there will be a sizable recession in the next 5 years. Prices will climb while wages stagnate, leading to many layoffs, trade restrictions, and low consumer confidence. For once in my life, I am somewhat happy to be among the millennial generation because Generation Z will face significant challenges. Story 57. It will be difficult until 2029, when once again the Democratic Party has to address the challenges created by the Republican Party. Story 58. It will have some fluctuations, but overall, it will grow. The primary goal of any economy is growth. Story 59. In 2033, Canada and Mexico begin a joint military operation to restore order and prevent the wave of criminal gangs that cross their borders from the ruins of what was once the world's only superpower. Story 60. First, the world now understands that it doesn't matter what agreements or assurances the last United States administration made. They all go out the window with the next administration. Therefore, it is wise to either avoid cooperating with the United States or complete any cooperation before the next administration comes to power. Dealing with the United States is risky. Only a fool would trust any promise from the United States moving forward. Second, the world now realizes that competence has been replaced by loyalty in the United States. Russia performed shockingly poorly in the Ukraine conflict because every subordinate only reported what they thought their supervisor, Vladimir Putin, wanted to hear. Putin was unaware of the severity of the situation with his military. This will be the case in the United States, where legitimate auditors have been replaced by loyalists. Any claims from the United States will be meaningless because the assessments being made will only reflect the fantasies demanded by Donald Trump and his associates. No one will have confidence in any data provided by the United States. Previously, the largest imports into the United States were investments from abroad. That has changed. No one will believe the economic data published by the United States, and the government will genuinely not know how accurate or inaccurate the reports from loyalists are, as they only convey what they believe those in power want to hear. Story 61. It will go up, then down, maybe down some more. Then it will correct and go up and then back down, followed by another upward movement. Story 62. For the next 4 years, rising unemployment, stabilizing inflation, and volatility in the U.S. stock market are expected, with very modest real gross domestic product growth. Once Trump is gone, all of the above will improve. The only thing that might worsen is the national debt. I do not foresee a situation in which we see annual budget surpluses again, let alone decreasing national debt. We know that Republicans have been fiscally irresponsible over the last 20 years, but I do not anticipate Democrats meaningfully raising taxes or cutting overall spending. It is not likely to happen. Story 63. We realize how arrogant we have been for the past 400 years. We acted as though we were superior for various reasons. Story 64. I will be spending significantly less, even when I have the money to spend. The uncertainty we face now will forever change my spending habits in the future. Story 65. Americans don't need to worry about immigrants taking their jobs. There won't be any jobs available. Story 66. If the United States cannot resolve its debt issue, which I believe can only be fixed by some technological miracle allowing for massive investments in oil and gas to power it, or the invasion of Canada and Greenland to control the market for global gas and oil, there will be a major financial crisis and a widespread, serious crisis that could lead to a significant war and a new Great Depression. Story 67. A significant crash and a reconnection as the United States reshores major industries. The macroeconomics of the United States economy has been on a crash course for almost 2 decades, particularly as the demographics of the baby boomers retiring became evident. To manage this transition, it would be ideal to enter the baby boomer retirement wave with around 30% debt to gross domestic product. However, the United States is entering this retirement wave with a debt level of 124%. Thus, this situation is not merely political. We are in for a challenging period. Story 68. Recession, market crash, brief depression. Reforms implemented by the end of the decade out of necessity will lead to a new progressive era by 2035. Story 69. The most I expect is survival. We will see what happens over the next few months. However, my expectations will likely decline as conditions progressively worsen under this administration. Story 70. I don't know. That's 10 years from now. We could be in a Pacific War, and our economy might be in a full-blown wartime economy in 10 years. I really have no idea what the future looks like. I do think the next year to year and a half will just be a continuation of what you're experiencing right now. Story 71. Remember in the movie Hook, when Peter, played by Robin Williams, is struggling to insult Rufio and the Lost Boys all react together to the plane crashing? Similar to that. Story 72. I believe a portion of the population will stop paying taxes. Prices will rise, thefts will increase, birth rates will decline, agricultural labor will cease, and after starvation, political unrest will follow. That is a hope, not an informed opinion. Story 73. My taxes have more than doubled despite the government cutting almost every service and closing the agencies funded by our tax dollars. I barely make $40,000 a year at this point. You cannot stimulate an economy if the government takes every last cent its people have. Story 74. China will overtake the United States as the richest economy in the world. United States politics often fluctuate, impacting the economy due to the control of Republican and Democratic governments. Story 75. Considering the parallels between 1914 and 2014, as well as 1919 and 2019, I assume that a Great Depression is imminent and that it will be caused by tariffs. Story 76. If the US dollar moves from being a reserve currency, it will be a rude awakening for Americans regarding how much they enjoyed that. Story 77. A crash like we have never seen before. All the prices will hit rock bottom, and Trump will claim victory over the lowest prices. You only need to look at his last presidency to understand this. Story 78. I thought it would be like the last term of former President Trump, where he took credit for President Obama's booming economy while pouring unsustainable short-term stimulus onto it, like throwing gasoline on a fire. Now I'm not so sure. It might just go straight to being a train wreck. I predict short-term, unsustainable economic policies and volatility. I expect the middle class to be gutted and employees to be oppressed while an extremely wealthy elite can afford to build space rockets as a hobby. Story 79. I can tell by the comments that people are responding both politically and emotionally. I am usually neither, but I definitely feel emotional. The reality is that the BRICS nations want to dethrone the United States dollar. We are very close to a global conflict, and it's concerning. Our only chance is to pay down our national debt, bring jobs and manufacturing back to the United States, and become less reliant on globalization, except for exporting our goods and services. Tariffs may cause short-term pain but can lead to long-term gain. Other nations have been charging tariffs on United States products for generations, yet many Americans still prefer cheaper, lower-quality goods. It is a strategic challenge to bring back manufacturing jobs and attract investments from foreign nations. If I were a foreign nation, I might choose to wait 4 years. We shall see. Story 80. Uneven, but largely trending upward. The commonly held view, influenced by consensus on Reddit, is that the situation is deteriorating. However, we are essentially at the same equity standpoint as we were 6 months ago. Story 81. There is a possibility that what was federal and bureaucratic is open for public bidding, leading to the emergence of a revolutionary new economy. Story 82. This video provides valuable information. Story 83. With Trump in office, it is going to crash hard. He was a poor businessman and continues to be inadequate as our president. Story 84. With any luck, we will have elections again, elect a Democratic president for 2 terms, and recover from this situation. Story 85. Stagnation and decline will persist until this era of isolation ends. It will still be an uphill battle, as there are few allies willing to trust us moving forward. Story 86. Over the next 10 years, we may face depression due to World War III, stagflation, and the United States being isolated by tariffs and reciprocal tariffs. However, there could be significant reforms in the latter half of the decade, presenting numerous opportunities for growth due to deflated assets. I'm just an ordinary person sharing my thoughts. What do I truly know? Story 87. The president loves uneducated individuals. It will take decades to rebuild the United States and its educational institutions. A future cannot be built on low education and ignorance. If America does not invest in the welfare, health, and education of its populace, it will become a virtual third-world pariah. Story 88. I think the moment BRICS figures out their own currency, the United States is in trouble. There was Bukele's speech he gave in the United States during Biden's presidency, where he made a valid point about the economy being a bubble ready to burst. Story 89. They are conditioning the populace for universal basic income, and Trump will stimulate the economy with quantitative easing and low interest rates if necessary. Story 90. I believe that once we have a president who is intelligent and doesn't treat every situation as a threat, things will start to balance out and improve. Although the situation may seem bleak now, it will eventually get better. It is astonishing because every time I think there is no way he can do or say something more foolish than what he just did, he manages to surprise me by doing something even more ridiculous. Story 91. War with Greenland, then the European Union as we join the new Axis powers, North Korea, Russia, and the United States. It would be amusing if it were not somewhat possible. I don't think we can easily recover from this. We are very secure and have a strong demographic. We could excel, but... Story 92. Living standards will decline, protests will continue, and Trump will lead the United States to lose respect and trust from the rest of the world. Story 93. Soup lines, re-education camps, and workhouses for all. God bless His Holiness Donald Trump for rescuing us from prosperity. Story 94. We will probably be in a difficult situation for 8 of those 10 years. If we are fortunate, we will not elect another ineffective leader during that time and can recover somewhat, but I believe it will take much longer to repair the damage that is being done at this moment. Story 95. Either robots and artificial intelligence will turn us into a utopia, or they will lead us to a reality similar to Snow Crash, or we may collapse into a third world while the BRICS nations rise. Story 96. I am an American by choice, having immigrated from Canada. This economy is no longer the benchmark for the world. In 2025, I would not recommend coming to America. Story 97. I observe the rest of the world participating in a system where the United States is not in charge, and the United States dollar is not the standard. I see the United States market remaining a significant target, but with a greater emphasis placed on the rest of the world, and a hesitation to allow any one nation to become too large or too powerful. I notice other nations relying on their own military forces, particularly nations within the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. With less reliance on United States military support, they will feel less compelled to offer favorable terms in trade. I perceive developing nations receiving more aid from Europe or Asia, and future development of infrastructure and economies that favor those continents. In summary, I see 80 years of hard work unraveling. Story 98. The children will continue to disrupt the situation so their wealthy friends can acquire everything at a low cost. They will then laugh when the adults take over and make improvements. Story 99. As a rational human being, I expect our economy to continue deteriorating, with prices rising on many goods, including those manufactured domestically. This is just as Vladimir Putin desired when he supported that elderly traitor in gaining power. Story 100. It's hard to say. Most people in this comment have very little economic knowledge, so take everything with a grain of salt. Most countries have tariffs on us already, so I wouldn't worry about it. The purpose of tariffs is to protect and incentivize domestic production. With the issue of illegal immigration, we will have more jobs available. In fact, we needed a market correction 8 years ago and never received one. Therefore, a slight loss for 1 to 2 years will be better in the long run. Story 101. Thoughts given free of political spin or details. 2025 will be a slow slide until around November. People will open their wallets and borrow money for the holidays for a small rally. $1 will buy €0.75 in December. Consumer credit card debt will cross the $2 trillion threshold. 2026 is when it will fall off a cliff. I expect 6 to 8% monthly inflation accelerating into some really ill-advised moves closer to the midterms, such as cryptocurrency dividends and giveaways to the wealthy, that will exacerbate the situation. Credit markets will freeze, and most lenders will face significant losses, leading to failures. The midterms will be litigated far beyond the last cast ballot. The holiday season will be financially dampened as many will focus on a good meal and company. I think 2026 will be the year we see many retail vanguards go under and divestiture of US-denominated instruments by foreign entities. $1 will buy €0.45 in May and likely €0.16 in December. 2027 and 2028 will be spent in the wilderness. Inflation will continue to rise while industry hastily tries to revamp itself for domestic consumption. Joblessness will likely peak here, and people will cling together in multifamily households to have roofs over their heads. There will be an official exchange rate, but in practice the real rate will be 8 to 10 times worse than that. 2029 and beyond really depend on the 2028 election outcome. Path 1 is a continuation of stagflation and a vastly lowered standard of living for almost all of us. Some good may come out of it. Some states and localities will band together to help their own and lift the floor at least a bit. Barter will return in some places. We won't know how many dollars it takes to get a euro because, in practice, there's no retail location to do it, and the posted rate is not the real rate. The wealthy will have their money in Japanese yen, euros, and Swiss francs, along with gold. Path 2 would likely be very painful in the short term but would result in a bit of a reset and an earnest rebuild of some of what has been lost. Even still, the standard of living in 2024 would be a decade or more off. The pace of a rebuild would likely depend on the approach of the person who wins the election and the Congress they have been given. Story 102. About 5 years ago, just after the COVID-19 pandemic began and during a period of protests in Portland, a customer of mine, who is very wealthy, told me confidently that Portland would struggle for 10 years and then return to normal. So, 5 years to go. Story 103. 10 years is a long time in economic terms, but some things are certain. Prices will be higher, taxes will be higher, the cost of living will be higher, unemployment will be higher, and the top 15% of earners will be making higher wages, while the remainder will likely keep pace with inflation. Corporations will be larger and more profitable. The United States will matter even less, primarily because other countries will become more productive and prosperous. Europe will likely run deficits to expand its military, reducing its dependence on the United States. This will lead to greater prosperity in Europe as it represents an investment in the future. By then, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will likely be gone, and a new leader will be in the White House pretending to know what is best for America. The government's role will be largely diminished. The stock market will likely be double what it is today, and everyone will be complaining that it is overpriced. Story 104. 90% of people declare bankruptcy, while opportunists purchase all available assets, and consumer spending declines to essential items only. Story 105. The rest of the world has lost trust in the United States due to the chaos and bluster of the Trump administration. They will pursue more trade deals that exclude the United States. It will take generations to regain trust, if it is possible at all. Until then, the United States economy will continue to shrink. Story 106. We are in a challenging situation regarding financial stability. Story 107. I believe that after 2 years of stagnation, assuming the midterms result in a shift in the House of Representatives, we may see a rebound along with possible impeachment and power limitations. If the House does not change, policy will likely remain extremely volatile and subject to sudden changes. Story 108. Trump is making America unable to compete in the global marketplace. He is damaging relationships with allies we have had since our early days as a nation. He has nearly eliminated any soft political power we possess internationally. It is concerning and unlikely that recovery will be possible. We have lost the goodwill we cultivated over decades. Unless he achieves significant successes, the situation is dire. I'm referring to gaining Greenland and using it, along with Alaska, to isolate Canada from trading with any other nation, allowing the United States to economically pressure Canada into joining. However, Trump has chosen to play all his cards at once, and now Europe will not stand by and watch that plan unfold. Asia is also resisting the tariffs. He is not using tariffs to gain leverage, and when other countries retaliate, he doubles down. He is not focused on one nation which could lead to success. Instead, he is imposing tariffs on virtually every other nation, which could have been addressed by simply creating a larger import tax. Again, the situation is concerning. Our president is mismanaging the economy. It may be advisable to sell US-based stocks and invest in international stocks instead. We are heading into a recession that could make the Great Depression seem reasonable. California is likely to face a devastating drought, and any aid states could expect after disasters has been eliminated. Workers' rights are being undermined. By December, the country may resemble a shadow of its former self. California could be on fire, the eastern coast may be devastated by storms, and the Midwest might experience destruction from tornadoes. Trump will likely blame Biden for all of this. The situation is dire. Story 109. We will reach 100 trillion in debt, and the US dollar will become the new yen. Hyperinflation is on the horizon. Everyone who has been saving diligently for retirement while not enjoying life will find their efforts in vain, while others will cherish their memories. Story 110. I am not entirely sure, but it probably will not be the dominant economic world power anymore. My intuition tells me that China will take on that role. It will not be enjoyable regardless. Story 111. I'm pretty sure that we are in the process of falling on our sword. I'm not certain if our wealthy leaders are going to maintain the military or if they will all migrate somewhere else. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.